Have you missed it? Like, do you guys think, I should have got in on Bitcoin?
I don't spend long
5 years ago.
Bitcoin.
And Bitcoin is something that certainly a lot of people think, is going to rise as an alternative currency.
The Australian Bitcoin Podcast, presented by HardBlock.
It's not a currency, it's not money. I don't understand it.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Australian Bitcoin Podcast. This is episode 99, which calls to mind two very excellent songs, one by Prince and one by Toto. Look them up. Today we have a very special episode 99. Joining us is Mr. Andrew Page, a private investor and founder of Strawman.com, and Scott Phillips, Chief Investment Officer at the Motley Fool. We're joined also with Mike, our regular co-host, and it's a little bit interesting today. We're not going to do necessarily a news roundup. Mike and I won't give our opinions on Bitcoin Core V30 necessarily. We probably won't get to that. We will certainly get to the price and how that will play out. But gentlemen, thank you all for coming on.
Howdy.
Pleasure, thanks for having me.
Great to be here. Looking forward to it.
You missed 99 Luftballons by Nina.
I was going to say Kate Bush, but that's the other one. Yes.
There's always one.
Yeah.
That's Wuthering Heights, Ram. You're close.
Yes, you're right.
So we're recording this on the 6th of November. Block height is 920,499, and the current price of Bitcoin, well, obviously sending everyone into a bit of a tears, but it's $103,682 US dollars. That equates to roughly 159,229 Australian peso dollary dues. We're running at a pretty decent hash rate. We're chucking over 1,115 exahash per second. And that kind of gives away the little bit of a housekeeping. One of the reasons that we're joined today with Andrew and with Scott is every now and again, as one of the people that uses the HardBlock account, I like to send out a tweet, a reply guy, and see if I can get a little bit of a niggle from time to time from some of the larger accounts and some of the more fiat enthused of the financial world. And basically, it's every now and again I'll engage with Scott, and he's a great sport. He's incredibly tolerant, which I appreciate. But we were basically discussing the mandates of central banks, full employment and low inflation, and whether or not they'd actually achieved that and had it gained that trust and executed on that mandate ever. And then as the discussion unfolded and Scott's tolerance levels slipped, basically Andrew chimed in and started talking about things that are a little bit above my pay grade. So I just wanted to basically facilitate a conversation today between Andrew and Scott, and Mike and I will sort of sit and listen and learn and try and get to some sort of alignment, perhaps, shall we say. So do you want to just explain a little bit about your familiarity, Scott, with Bitcoin?
Oh man, what do I know about Bitcoin? I'm not here as the expert, right? You guys are the experts. You do this for a quid. By the way, I've got a dog. I think I mentioned that. Who's 8 weeks old and just decided to pull my earphone cord. So we'll see how we go. We got through two podcast episodes this morning of Motley for Money without it, but unfortunately he's just gone bananas. All right, sorry. I don't know how to answer the question, honestly. There's not a lot of value in me trying to summarize Bitcoin for your listeners or for you guys. We know, of course, that the basics of the cryptocurrency and the fact that there are limited amounts, Satoshi, the whole box and dice. I'm not going to give you a reasonable or decent summary in short or long form, honestly. So happy to go with questions, happy to talk about whatever we want. But what do I know about Bitcoin? I mean, it's a 5-second answer and a 5-hour answer. And I will say I've done a bit of reading. So I've read the Bitcoin Standard and Broken Money. Andrew has been relentless on the Motley for Money podcast telling me about it. So most of what I know, frankly, comes from those two books and Andrew's consistent proselytizing, can I say? So whatever I know that's wrong, I'm going to blame him. If whatever I know that's right, I'll say it's the books.
I'll just add very quickly, and I mentioned this to Scott this morning, is that I've got all the time in the world to sort of talk and debate this kind of stuff. But I really want to blow a bit of smoke up the proverbial for you here, Scott, because the frustration I shared with you earlier is that I think each to their own, right? Like, if you don't like Bitcoin, you don't like Bitcoin. Who cares, right? It's up to you. Have fun staying poor, as we like to say. What I can't abide and what I cannot stand is people who have absolutely not taken a tiny amount of effort to try and understand it, and yet speak with such degrees of conviction. That's the problem. And I just want to say, well done to you, Scott, for actually, at least, I know we don't align on it perfectly, but you've made an effort, and that just puts you in a very different category to a lot of the Bitcoin bears and naysayers out there who just admittedly don't know anything, but know enough to know that everyone else is wrong. And so, hats off to that.
Thanks, mate. What I will say, actually, guys, is my issue. I don't know anything anywhere near enough about the technology that goes behind it. I know the basics, as most people who are semi-interested do. Andrew was talking about ordinals this morning. I had to ask him twice. So, there are. I'm not an expert, right, at all. And
not in a positive way. Let me just hasten to add.
Tell me what they were. So here's the thing, right? I have no beef with the idea. I have no beef with the concept. I have no beef with the tokens. My only, it's not a beef. My simple question is, what needs to happen for them to be worth more in future? And that comes down to an adoption rate. And for me, or level of adoption, frankly, not a rate, level of adoption. And for me, it's just uncertain. I don't know is the answer. And so when I think about the way I invest outside cryptocurrency, or outside Bitcoin in particular, my general view is I look for things where I have a higher degree of confidence in what the future might look like, whether that's Woolies selling more groceries, BHP mining more iron ore. They're not recommendations, by the way. I don't recommend or own either of them. It's a shorter putt. If I look and say, well, in X years' time, X accounts might or might not be using Bitcoin, maybe it's a lot bigger, maybe it's a lot smaller, maybe it's the same size, maybe it's somewhere in between. It's the inherent uncertainty of the adoption rate that, for me, has kept me thus far, at least, on the sidelines. And so it's not I don't like Bitcoin, it's not an anti-sound money, it's not an anti-anything, other than a straight up, I don't know, is the answer in terms of what the adoption looks like. And Andrew and I will be complimenting each other through this podcast, I think. And one of Andrew's favorite regularly repeated phrases is opportunity cost. And so for me, I've got X dollars. I can invest X dollars in any asset across the market to try and build my long-term wealth. And I'm trying to find the things I have highest degree of confidence or conviction in. And thus far, that hasn't been Bitcoin. So it's not an anti-Bitcoin at all. I do occasionally poke fun at the Bitcoin bulls because they're just easy to poke sometimes, but largely in jest. And I hope the tone comes across on Twitter that way. It's kind of just having a bit of fun.
There's no subtlety or nuance on Twitter, dude. You know.
Well, I know that's my first mistake.
It's not the place to go for good-natured, well-informed debate. But yes,
exactly. But yes, so honestly, that's as easy and hard as it is. I don't have a view. Sorry, the dog's squeaking the toy. I have no view at all on the technology that's more informed than anybody else. I don't have a bear case which is it's going to be hacked, it's going to be this, it's going to be that, or there is no. I mean, you can create a bear case with Bitcoin, you create a bull case with Bitcoin. Broadly speaking, my current view is I have not sufficient conviction to either go long or short. I'm not shorting Bitcoin, but I'm not buying Bitcoin at the moment either, just because I don't know is the answer. And on a balance of probabilities, until and unless it becomes one of my better ideas for my limited pool of investment cash, it hasn't been part of my portfolio.
I'm getting a sense, sorry to cut you off for a sec, Andrew, that your 8-week-old puppy dog is a Bitcoiner because he keeps...
Because he doesn't shut up, is that? No.
Using that squeaking toy, yeah.
That's a fair call. Oh, man. That is a
Tremendous.
very fair
hopefully you'll settle in. He's a beautiful German Shepherd. If he comes over, I'll share your audience. But yeah, sorry guys, apologies for the squeak. It's probably not much fun audio wise. But because he's 8 weeks old, he's got to be in the room with me because I can't leave him up in the house.
It's not a problem. So before we get to you, Andrew, I want to try and understand your Bitcoin thesis and what your understanding of it is. But having read the Bitcoin Standard, Scott, and having read particularly Broken Money by Lynn Alden, who very meticulously steps out, I guess, the problem and then offers up the solution towards the end. Yep. Did you come away from those books with a greater or lesser understanding? And, well, let's start there.
Yes. So, yes, I thought the Bitcoin Standard was mostly terrific history, a little bit of unhinged commentary, and you know,
you like modern art.
Well, I won't go into more detail than that. And then after that, then I read Broken Way by Lynn Alden. I really appreciated the historical context and the explanations of how we got here, where we are, all that kind of stuff before you get to the Bitcoin story. And I am probably supportive of a sound money system. Which, when I say sound money, I would be happy just with no money printing. Whether it's actually based on a particular asset, or whether it's just a case of we've got this many dollars in circulation, we're done. That we can have that conversation about which version of, whether it's called officially sound money, whether it's, I don't know how these terms sit in the Bitcoin community, but the idea of money printing is, I think, almost always objectively bad. I can imagine some emergency circumstances, and what Andrew and I have talked a lot about is the right system run by the wrong people ends up with the wrong outcomes. And so he and I have this Pollyanna versus maybe a bit more cynical view of what we should do and trust and think about the way the systems are run. But pretty broadly, I am pro structural budget balance, but budget deficits and surpluses in given parts of the cycle, and generally pretty pro not printing money. As I said, I don't really care whether that's based on a physical asset or just a limited amount of fiat, which doesn't get increased. And again, I know there are positives and negatives on that one, but that's probably fair to say where I get to. I think Lynn's book was excellent. Some of the explanation, some of the basic tech was suitable for someone like me who just doesn't have as much depth as you guys have in what Bitcoin is, how it works. I'm still only an inch deep, let's be really honest. Like, the stuff that's just phenomenally complex and really impressive too, by the way. Like, as a technology project is amazing to me. So I'm super keen on the technology. I think the concepts are perfectly fine. I think the sound money idea, very good. I could imagine certain circumstances where we wanted to print some money in extreme circumstances, but then I think, as plenty of people listening would say, it never becomes just extreme circumstances, it then becomes run-of-the-mill. And so you've got a bit of a trade-off there. But that's kind of my broad approach generally to the larger monetary topic, if that helps kind of set the scene for the conversation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, Andrew, why are you such a Bitcoin advocate? What about it? I mean, why do you differ from Scott?
I'll go and just get a coffee. I'll be back in an hour.
Catch you in 4 hours. No, it's hard. I mean, I'm trying to remember who originally said it, but I think it was Jameson Lopp who sort of said no one understands Bitcoin, and that's okay. And I think that's true, and it's something that I have very much come to realize, because we always talk about this rabbit hole, and you sort of start off a little curious and you sort of go down a little bit, and then you keep going and you keep going. And I've been pretty deep in the weeds for close to 4 years now, and I still don't think I know nearly enough, and I'm actually embarrassed at my level of understanding when you come across real Bitcoiners, so it is a very, very, very deep topic. So I like Scott. Yeah, I'm further along in the journey, but I certainly don't want to hold myself up as an expert. And I would sort of say, in terms of the technology, I think we all get a little too hung up on it, really. It's kind of like, for me, it doesn't matter what the technology is. What matters is that it works. I think I've used this analogy with you before, Scott, which is, I don't pretend to be an expert in aerodynamics and jet engines, but I happily jump on a plane.
Yes.
Why? Because it works. Yeah. I can see that it works. It's got decades of working incredibly well. It's statistically the safest form of transport. I don't need to know what mechanism is injecting fuel into that engine and how it does it and what the limiter is. And it's irrelevant. And I think it's a very understandable thing that people feel as though they need to understand the technology before they understand Bitcoin. But I've sort of come to the point in the journey where it's like, you know what? All you need to understand is there's a limited supply. Can we swear on this podcast? It's unfuckable. And anyone can use it. And like, oh yeah, but how? Like, don't worry about it. We'll worry about it if you want. And by all means, there's all that data is out there, but that's not the point. So I want to very much steer to that, because I think from those axioms, very, very interesting things flow. And I won't retell the story because it is a long one, but the short of it is, I was a massive Bitcoin skeptic. I thought it was all ridiculous. I thought it was a Ponzi scheme. Me and Scott have been working together for years. And way back in 2016, 2017, mate, we were doing a podcast. It was the same podcast, in fact. And Scott bought $100 worth of Bitcoin. And we just did episode after episode where I would just laugh at him. Like, what are you doing? You're an idiot. What problem does it solve? All of the fun, all of that kind of stuff.
I wanted to go down there. How much is it now? How much is it now, Scott?
Oh, how much is it now? Oh, well done. Well done to you and your little crypto experiment. I was so anti it, right? Which I think maybe I'm just trying to make it myself feel better. I think it is a very healthy and natural reaction. If your immediate reaction is, oh yeah, it makes perfect sense, I'm on board, you're a weird person, right? Like there's a lot of backfilling and questions you need to ask before you sort of get there. So I'll say that, but fast forward to probably around the time of COVID when it really got serious, which was, it's still around and it's at record highs. And as anyone who's like looked at bubbles before, whether it's South Sea or whether it's a tulip bubble or whether it's a Ponzi like Bernie Madoff, they have this property of spiking massively and then crashing, and that's it. The story's over. That's it. Bubbles do not reinflate to higher highs and fall to lower lows and do so over a 16-year period. So there was something that was like, I don't know what's going on, but something is going on, right? And so I took it upon myself, and just in the space that I work, it was coming up more and more. And if I'm going to be a critic, I at least need to be an informed critic. So I set out on a journey to educate myself with the express intent of arming myself with some really good arguments so I could very much throw cold water on this thing and be done with it and move on with my life and get on with the serious business of picking stocks. And the short version is that going through that process, I orange pilled myself, and then I went further down the rabbit hole. I was like, it starts off like, yeah, maybe I should grab a little bit just to test it, It's like,
in case it catches on.
Well, maybe just a little bit, you never know. And then maybe I need a little bit more. And then it just like obsesses you and just like, and fast forward, and it's become a very, very material part of my portfolio. And as I said, again, Scott often, and even this morning, it's like, this is why I love these conversations. Like if I'm wrong, like if we're wrong, and anyone listening to like I'm assuming your audience is 99.99% Bitcoiners, right? Like nothing's a sure thing. And if there is something that could go wrong, it behooves us to at least understand and appreciate that, because if the investment philosophy, investment's not the right word, but if the bull case, is built entirely on hopium, then it's not a good bull case. And one of my favorite sayings is the best way to strengthen a bull case is to find the bear case. Like if you can't destroy an investment idea, ergo, it must be a good investment idea. So part of what I love doing with Scott all the time and with friends and family, anyone who'll put up with me, is like, let me know where I'm wrong, okay? Because I might be making a terrible mistake, and if that's the case, I really would prefer to find out, have my ego a little bit bruised, but walk away before it's too late to walk away. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Oh, hey, can I jump in quickly too? You asked what I know about Bitcoin. What I do know is I mentioned cryptocurrency 2 or 3 times, and I suspect 99.99% of your audience, like Ram mentioned, also hates the word cryptocurrency used with Bitcoin. So I didn't do it deliberately. I'm not trying to poke anyone. I just remembered as I was chatting that I made the point before to Ram and separately. It is a cryptocurrency, but I know that the view is that that legitimizes the others, and so that's a word that is
I nearly corrected you.
Frowned upon. Yes, I
nearly corrected you.
I'll do it myself.
You're good.
So I know that. I know that.
Scott, I want to go back to what you mentioned in your opening, was talking about the adoption problem and how that's kind of holding you back a little bit from fully jumping in as that adoption issue. And, you can look at Bitcoin from a global perspective. You can see it's a very extreme end of adoption. On the one hand, you've got very low countries that have got really bad currencies like South Africa and all these sort of third world places who have got crap currencies, really crap fiat currencies. And so they're almost forced out of necessity to explore options like Bitcoin. And you do see this sort of grassroots adoption starting to crop up in sort of the third world around the place. And then on the very far tail end, you've now got this hardcore institution adoption of Bitcoin treasury companies and your BlackRocks and even countries, governments jumping in. So you've kind of got these extreme ends. And then all of us in the middle, the unwashed masses in the middle are just kind of, where that adoption case isn't there from either an extremely high level investment perspective or that necessity aspect. And so, maybe unpack your barriers to that adoption a bit more. Why do you think it's this case, and what do you think might need to happen before you sort of see that mainstream adoption start to come in?
That's a great point. And honestly, again, Andrew, I'm going to give lots of compliments, as I've already said. He talks about the adoption curve and the fact that, in his view, I'm stealing your words here, Ram, but that it's less risky now at a much higher price than it was 5 or 6, or you can name the price in time, Ram, because that adoption has increased meaningfully over that time. You know, the idea of the magic internet beans becomes now something, as you've already said, plenty of people are using, governments, institutions are using, investing in, holding as treasury. And so it's absolutely improving, it's increasing. And so the adoption question is twofold. It's the amount of adoption, how quickly it gets to whatever the terminal level of adoption is, and whether it's gold's market cap or twice that or whatever the number is, how quickly it gets there. And then what is the value of that at that point when adoption flattens out? And again, remember, I want to be really clear with your audience. These are not bear cases. This is not, I hate Bitcoin because. This is, I don't know those answers. So in one version of the future, adoption continues at a reasonable pace, stops about 25% more than this, and the price actually falls because a lot of speculative buying. And by the time it gets down to just a transactional token, currency, asset, call it what you want. And again, your listeners will have their own views on those words. It's useful, but maybe at a lower level. Or maybe institutions take it on, more institutions take it on, more of the third world does, it becomes an accepted mechanism of exchange, maybe by the third world countries, maybe as a payment layer for the big institutions. And again, anyone who's heard me talk to Ram about this will know that I'm stealing a lot of his words here because I'm learning a lot from him. But I don't know. I just don't know. And so again, to use the investment example of shares, if I had a company that was like, well, this company could have a product at some point and maybe it's got revenue already. And maybe if it's a biotech company that finds the next cancer drug, maybe you can do this and this and this and this. If it's not that, maybe it's a really good drug that helps in certain circumstances, a bit smaller, or maybe it flames out and it's not worth anything. Or maybe it finds what it finds and it's good, but the share price is already so high, it assumes it's curing cancer for the world. And so even though the product is successful, the price falls. And so those are the combinations of outcomes. And so you say, well, what, and I've got to be honest with you guys, I don't know. Given my investment approach, I've probably got to change my investment approach because given the approach that I use, assuming people are going to eat more baked beans from Woolies is pretty straightforward. Not hard to guess. Maybe it drops because people buy spaghetti instead of baked beans, but it's there or thereabouts. A fast-growing internet retailer, Visa, right? Costume jewelry. You see more stores, more people shopping, really big sales momentum, and at the current price, I can do the maths and say, well, it only needs to double sales from here, and if it does, the price is worth paying. So that's I won't say it's easy. It's easy. It's not simple because you've got to guesstimate those things and try and be right. Trying to work that out from a Bitcoin perspective, I don't have the frameworks, the hooks to be able to go, that is therefore this big, And even if it does double in penetration, what does that mean for the price? Is that the end of the penetration? How do I think about a price in the context of that volume and that adoption, that acceptance? And that's really, really hard. I can absolutely say Lavisa sells X billion dollars worth of jewelry. They make a 14% gross margin. This is what the number looks like. This is what profit looks like. I'm going to pay 10 times that profit. These are all made up numbers. So I'll pay this price. If the price gets higher, I feel like it's overvalued. That's easier to do. So again, it doesn't exclude Bitcoin as being investable, but from a framework perspective, the hardest thing for me is I don't know how big it gets. I don't know what it's worth at that point. I don't know when it gets to stability, whether the price is therefore falls back from that because constant use takes the speculative bit out of it when it stops growing. We all know story stocks, right? Maybe your listeners do or your viewers do. The story stocks everyone loves until no one loves them anymore. And you get this massive run up when everyone's excited about it, this massive crash when everyone goes, I'm off to the next party. And again, really clearly, not a prediction, not a suggestion. I'm not trying to say Bitcoin is any of those things. But that's the framework that my investing has taken thus far. And that's a harder leap to make when I'm used to having a better framework for those future values than Bitcoin provides, just because it is nascent, just because it doesn't have intrinsic value. There's no fundamental value. It's a medium exchange, a store of value, all those things. What's that? What's the Australian dollar worth? Well, nothing. What's the US dollar worth? Nothing, other than a certain number of hours labor for a certain number of cans of Coke. And this all gets devalued next year. I'm sure you guys will want me to throw in. So when it's debased next year, it'll be more hours of work for fewer Coke cans. But yeah, sorry, long answer. That's the framework that I have trouble squaring to be comfortable enough, at least historically, again, to say, okay, I think it's going to be higher. I think it's going to be used more. And not only do I think, I feel comfortable enough to take some of my money out of some other investment idea and put it over in Bitcoin that I think has a better upside and kind of probabilistic outcome than something I already own.
So, Scott, if I can just ask, because I'll left bell curve this for a minute here. For me, it's all about the denominator. So all of the gains that you would make in your investment get denominated in a fiat currency, yes, which can be printed ad ex nihilo, ad infinitum. Yep. Basically, you have to work for something that another man can just print out of thin air, in short. 100%. So that's where that's the revelation for me personally was like, Oh, right. The denominator is busted.
Yeah.
And any kind of investment that I currently have in my ComSec account or whatever it was, eToro, is kind of like reasonably worthless, less than this, because I don't own any. I didn't own any at the time. And so the opportunity cost rears its ugly head. But I'm curious. So Greg Foss, a while ago, a couple of years ago, probably 2022, he ran some numbers about TAM. So total
Addressable market.
Yep.
Thank you. Total addressable market. Now, I don't know if these figures align with 2025. I've just thrown it into Grok to see if it could run the numbers again. But at the time, he was talking about $400 trillion of global debt. So Grok has it at $504.6 trillion of global debt. Real estate, $327 trillion. Equity, $119 trillion. Private, which is gold and hard assets, is $112 trillion. So a total of gosh, what is that?
Quadrillion, probably, is it? Have you got over trillion?
That's a lot. 1 quadrillion, 63 trillion, 0.2. Holy smokes. So with that in mind, would it be unreasonable for Bitcoin to take 5% of that?
Yeah, I don't know. So, and again, not as a criticism, just as a statement. In some version of the future, Bitcoin is bigger than gold, right? It's more functional than gold for all the reasons that you guys will absolutely tell me. You're absolutely right. It is a better gold, other than currently the level of acceptance, adoption, and kind of faith, trust, cultural relevance, those things that kind of gold has because it's been around for centuries, rather than Bitcoin, which is pretty new. So yes, absolutely, it is a better gold. And this is where, again, conceptually, I have no problem with the thesis. Could it get 5%? Yeah, it could. Could it be 1%? Yes.
So
could
would it be reasonable then to say, why not allocate 5% of the portfolio to Bitcoin just as a hedge, even 2%?
So that's and you get to portfolio management. I should say, by the way, I'm a licensed financial advisor, so none of this is advice. I only do general advice, and I have to throw that in because I'm going to talk about what I would do or how I invest. So yes, if I wanted to hedge, I own no gold, by the way. I own no silver. I own no property other than my own home. And so if I had a strategy which was, could I produce a portfolio with some hedges in it? I could absolutely make that case, yes. And probably pretty reasonably too. My investment approach is to maximize my returns over the long term and cop whatever volatility comes in the meantime. So people have bonds in their portfolio, they have property, they have cash. I have none of those things. I'm all in on shares, not because I work for the Motley Fool. I work for the Motley Fool because I like shares rather than the other way around. I expect that, and I'll leave Bitcoin out for the second because I don't have a forecast for Bitcoin, but traditional assets, I don't any of those other things because I expect over the long term, those shares, a well-chosen portfolio of shares beats those other asset classes. So if I was to design a traditional portfolio and say 40% Australian shares, 20% national shares, 20% bonds, 10% property, 10% gold and Bitcoin, yes, I could absolutely make that case for sure. It's just not the way I invest personally. I'm looking for maximum long-term gains, not volatility protection or any sort of short-term hedging against anything. Now, if you're saying hedge against the world collapsing and dying and falling in a ditch, then we're probably in guns and baked beans territory, and 5% something, but probably not enough either at that point. So yeah, it depends what you mean by hedge in particular, but from a financial perspective, I don't hedge, I never have, I never will. I'm trying to maximize my returns and I'll cop the volatility as it comes.
Okie doke, fair enough. I mean, yeah, for curiosity's sake too, I should just let everybody know that if Bitcoin was to take 5% of that TAM, it would put it at roughly $53.16 trillion market cap, or $2.53 million per coin. So there's some bullish
change. Absolutely.
So the notion of the denominator, if I can bring it back to the original intent of the conversation, of the initiate, the catalyst. It was central banking and whether or not they were achieving their mandates and whether or not they were or had proven themselves over time to do that. Full employment, low inflation. We've seen consistently that they're constantly missing the mark. And one could argue that if you don't do your job properly and you constantly are underperforming, you just don't get on the run-on side anymore. Like, you're just not called up. So where do you stand on that?
We were talking about this just this morning.
We were. I'm trying to set it up well. So If you so the question is, do you fundamentally believe the central banks are necessary, worthwhile, should happen, all that kind of good stuff? I will reject the premise of the question to the political speak. I don't think that missing the mark is the same as saying therefore the mark is not worth chasing or trying to be less wrong, as a general idea. So not about monetary policy in particular, though we can get to the specific in a second. So if you were to say the Federal Treasurer had a budget forecast of X, it came in at Y, they've never hit their budget estimates, always been up or down, therefore we should stop doing budgets, right? Or should stop collecting money, should stop having governments. In perfect analogies, as Andrew mentioned to me this morning, I'll feel free to jump in again here. But my broad point is the absence of specific accuracy doesn't mean either two things. One, you should keep trying, or two, directionally, it may well be better than doing nothing at all. So if you're someone who wants absolutes, if it's not right, don't do it. I get it. Take dieting, right? Should I diet if I don't get up to my target weight? Probably not. I probably should keep dieting, because you know what? If I lose a little bit of weight, that's better than getting all or nothing, right? I can't diet. I can't get my target weight. That's useless. I'm going to go and sit on the couch and eat a donut. And again, useless analogy, right, just for hyperbole. But that idea of are they hitting their targets? No, we know that, right? They were a long way under the inflation forecast for a while. By the way, I also would say I wouldn't have the inflation forecast where it is, or target where it is. Sorry, I'd have 1% to 2% max, even if we're going to print money, which I've already said I'm happy not to. So I'm in the camp of dragging that back. 3% inflation is not price stability, which is their mandate, right? Price stability and full employment. So you're right, and so again, so the question also is, what should the mandate be? So do you destroy the village to save it, or do you save the village? And people can have very different views, and I suspect everybody's yelling at the pod machines right now and saying, you're an idiot, Phillips. Of course they should get rid of the central banks. It hasn't worked. It's not going to work. Never worked. Don't do it. That's a very valid view. I don't have a strong view. I would stop printing money. But if we can use interest rates increasing and decreasing to increase or slow the velocity of money in the economy, not extra money, but the money we have, in other words, what we save or loan or invest because the price of money changes, and that could have positive economic impacts. If it could, should we try it? Probably, yeah, depending on what the downsides are. So I know it's an article of faith, and I know it's something that no one else on this podcast or listening has a view on. other than just to say, I don't think the absence of hitting those targets is the justification for getting rid of them altogether. Just so I wouldn't say I'm not going to bother dieting unless I can hit my target weight. I think there's benefit potentially. Sorry, I should have there's benefit. There may be benefit. We shouldn't objectively say hit target, get disbanded. I think there is plenty of grey in between. We should explore. We may still decide to disband it, by the way, but there's plenty of room in between that to say, all right, you never got there, but directionally, did you help support the economy in tough times? Yes. Did you reduce exuberant bubbles? Yes. Okay, well, I'm not saying that they did, by the way, but in that context, would it be worth trying to do that in the future if we could do it well? Maybe. So I'm not absolute about much in life, almost nothing, but I think central banks have undershot. Again, I'm very happy they undershot the inflation target. They're now on the wrong side of that. So yes, there's a very good argument that's true. And the other thing, by the way, we've got to talk about the definitions. What is price stability? What is full employment? It's not literally 0% unemployment, of course. So there's lots of kind of boff and speak in there to unpack if you want to do that. But that's my kind of view on central banks. Is I wouldn't get rid of them just because they're imperfect. We may get rid of them because they're imperfect, or we might try and fix them. But I think either is a valid and valuable discussion to have to see what the best case or least worst case is for an economy, for a country, for a society.
What's annoying to me as a bit of a Luddite who probably doesn't have the depth of knowledge you do on these sort of like macro scales and the sort of traditionalist view of finance, I've just come in purely as a Bitcoin retard.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
What annoys me is there's no countries out there. There's no examples of countries that have gone against the grain and actually gone for a different system in a proper way, given it a proper go, throw out the central bank. Like I think the last country to do that was, well, every country I can think of that has done it then gets invaded by the US government and,
by freedom.
liberated from their
right.
from their freedom, oppressive, economic, whatever, something. So what's annoying to me is that no countries are like willing to give it a go. No one's got a backbone. And so maybe it will take some kind of collapse or some schism that would allow a country to actually try it out. But do you see any route for a country to have that freedom to actually just give it a go and see what happens? Is that a realistic scenario?
Aram, why don't you jump in too, Matt, because I feel like I'm taking all the airtime here. Is it realistic? If things get bad enough, yes. Never waste a crisis, right? the challenge for, and again, I'm not saying this should be the case, but the challenge for any country in a world where you're dealing with fiat currencies and you're dealing with interest rates that are being set by other countries' central banks and by the rest of the world's central banks, is that not playing that same game is perceived as pretty risky. And I think that's probably fair. Now, when I say risky, it could be great, by the way. So I'm not just trying to paint a negative picture here. It'd be a fascinating experiment, but I'm also not entirely sure that if you stop printing money tomorrow, you wouldn't actually make things a whole lot worse for a short to medium amount of time, and then hopefully come out at the end as a beautiful butterfly. But I can absolutely understand why countries are like, well, we know how this works, we know what the rules are, we know, frankly, we know what inflation and debasement what we create. So we know what this looks like, this playing field looks like. Should we abandon that and hope that the future is better? Now, I say should. Plenty of people say, yes, you should. Why not? If you were that person, if you were the banker, the central banker, if you were the government, if you were the individual citizen there, you'd be like, well, I'd like to think the idea of sound money would make sense, but man, like if this doesn't work, I could be out of a job, can't feed my family. And again, I'm not saying it will happen. I'm just saying, do you take the risk? Do you literally go heads or tails, guys? Let's see how that pans out.
Well, I'll jump in with what my assumption is, and then maybe we'll get Andrew to comment further. Is if a country did take this path and they went on a sound money standard, there is going to be this chasm of pain because the money printer creates all these inefficiencies because you're going away from free market principles and you've got all these like just silly business happening in your economy as a result of money printing. Mm-hmm. And so if Australia did it, we turned off the spigot, suddenly all these things that we're doing, that we're funding through silly government initiatives would just disappear because people don't really want them. There's no economic case for it. So it would cause a ton of havoc. A lot of people would lose their jobs. A lot of people would lose their ass. But then it does then allow the butterfly to roam free in theory, because the phoenix rises from the ashes. Yes, and you're in this sort of like golden era of money is allocated properly.
Yeah, very potentially.
So it's just can you convince a country to go on board and cross that chasm to then reap the benefits on the other end?
Yeah. I would come at it. This is so the tinfoil. I feel like I'm in a safe space here, so I'm going to put the tinfoil hat on.
Oh, it's being recorded.
I've got a little bit more license, I feel, than I might have in other venues. And I think what you're asking there, Mike, assumes a very open, forthright dialogue between all the various stakeholders in a society. Yeah. And we might sit here as Bitcoiners and look at all these problems of fiat currency, but it's not a problem if you're a quintillionaire, right? Like you've got to understand the people who are in a position to make this decision have got from their perspective, what's the problem? You're telling me that I'm going to have a backstop, an implicit bailout if things get too bad. You're telling me that if, anytime that I get in a little bit of difficulty with my business, I'm going to get a liquidity injection or some whatever, phrase you want to talk about. For the people making the decision, you want to tell me as a politician that I'm going to have to actually tax people more if I want to spend more? This is not a good deal. I am not interested in this. And I know it sounds conspiratorial, but it's just like, follow the incentive. I think if you were to put the 25 million odd Australians into an auditorium, and you could have something. I don't know how you would do it, right? But if you could very clearly and rationally articulate the case for sound money, and I would love to give it a go, by the way. And I think after people had a chance to meditate and think on that and let the penny drop, they would be, yes, let's do it. But I also think even after you did that, and even you were somehow successful in being clear and concise and rational and to the point, there would be a lot of politicians, bankers, and the rest who would go, no, this sounds like a worse deal for me. And they're right. It is a worse deal for them.
But also ask, where are those bankers located? Because I'd wager that if we did get the 25 million Australians in a room, you did articulate a case for sound money, you got everyone on board and you did it, yes, and then the next day, all right, we're on a hard money standard, whatever that is, Bitcoin, gold, whatever, central bank, sorry, you're kicked out. We'd have the US government probably knocking on our door the next day saying, hey, what are you doing?
Who was it? I'm going to forget the quote now. Kissinger made a point of sort of like, he who controls the food controls the population. He who controls the means of production controls the nation. He who controls the money controls the world. Yes. And it's true. And there was I think there's a Lenin quote in there as well, who talks of the power that money has, and it really does have incredible power. I'm really not coming from a lizard people underground, whatever kind of perspective. It's just true.
It's
we all
arguably
know
the best
that
invention, the best human invention.
Absolutely, it's up there with the wheel and fire, right? And if money is power. We know this to be true. If you don't think that's, I mean, do you think Elon Musk has more power than any of us or a peasant farmer in the Congo? Like, obviously money is power. Now, that doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad thing, but it is a bad thing if you can control free, if you can create money for free and then sort of control it. So this is like, to take that power away from someone is going to be extremely difficult. Now, the other thing you've got to remember here is that none of these people, I don't think they're intrinsically evil people. I think they live within their own bubble. They operate within their own incentive structure. And I guarantee you, if you were to hook most of them up to a lie detector test, they would go, absolutely, there are potential pitfalls with this. I make the point to Scott earlier that, Zimbabwe and Australia runs on the exact same system. It's just that we've got more institutional rigor and that we don't abuse the power of the printing press as much as they do in Zimbabwe. Other than that, it's exactly the same. But the point really is here is that how are you going to? I mean, they will say, and they do say, yes, there are problems with it, but if we are able to manage this appropriately, we can help poor people. We can help the disadvantaged. That's the IMF's whole deal, right? That's the socialists. There's a new mayor in New York right now saying we're going to tax the billionaires more and we're going to do the money and we're going to do it to help the little guy. I just finished reading Hayek's book on the road to serfdom, and this is exactly the kind of point that he makes, right? And so I want to put the conspiratorial stuff to one side. These are generally, there's always some sociopath somewhere, right? But generally, these are good, well-intentioned people. And frankly, the philosophy isn't that wrong because there's a lot of ifs in here. But if they have a very good way to read the sentiment and demands within the economy, and if they can direct that in the right place, then yes, that can be a force for good, right? And that's what they're trying to do. Now, I would argue that no one can understand the motivations and desires of, millions of people. And I would say that people are just naturally, to err is to be human. They will make mistakes. They will be selfish. They will be myopic. They will be short-term. There'll be all the things that all of us are. And so while I can get by, the best analogy here is communism, right? And it's almost a cliche at this point. It's like communism is great in theory. It just sucks in practice. And the only reason it sucks, it's great in theory. It's like, yeah, we should really have a much more equitable distribution of all of the products of society. It's like, who's going to be against that? The trouble is it falls over in the execution because, well, actually, you can't centrally control prices. And by doing that, you're always going to have favoritism and political cronyism, and it just all falls apart. So hopefully that sort of squares where Scott is and where I am. Because I think in terms of the philosophy as Scott lays it out, I actually 100% agree. I just disagree that it's something that can be realistically achievable, at least most of the time. And so for that point of view, I tend to sort of say, no, Bennett, let the free market decide, because it tends to be pretty good at deciding the price on these things.
By the way, guys, there's a in my head there's an applause-o-meter and a boo-meter, which goes up when Andrew speaks, and then down when I speak. So we'll see how. Don't put that on the podcast; it could suck. The other thing I would say, just quickly, is in the pragmatic real world, I think you could convince the 25 million people it was a good idea as long as they weren't the ones who suffered.
Yes.
So if 1 in 5 people are going to lose their jobs for 3 years, and 1 in 10 businesses are going to fail, and 10% house loans are going to default because they don't get growth and they negatively geared these things. And you go, so it turns out, look to people to either side of you. One of you is going to lose their job, one's going to lose their house, and one's going to have something else. Maybe it's you, maybe it's not. Should we do it anyway? And I think that's where the reality comes in of it's a great idea in concept, right? The utopia, if we got there, right? If we just crossed that horrible bridge and get the other side where it's all sunshine and rainbows, like, oh yeah, we should do that. The getting to that point is the challenge. And I think, it's never going to happen because of what Andrew's already said. But if you were going to do it, you would have a benevolent dictator who spent X years, 10-ish years, just winding back the money printer back to effectively zero, sound money. again, whether it doesn't need to be backed, right? Just we have this many dollars, that's how many dollars we're going to have, that's it. But it doesn't need to be backed other than to give ourselves some confidence that no one's going to turn the machine back on again. You could get there. And I think, honestly, if you're going to be pragmatic about it and have that conversation, it would be, look, this is going to be a little bit painful for a little bit of time. We're going to do it hard, and some of you are going to be completely screwed. Or we can just kind of take it on to get there, and in 10 years' time, we'll be at a sound money standard. That's how I think we could and should do it if we're going to move that direction. And again, as I've already said, I'm kind of pro not printing money. So whatever it's backed by, getting there in a way that doesn't... Because, it's easy to say, in 5 years' time, it'd be great. In the meantime, death, plague, pestilence, losses,
it's not gonna...
suicides. It's easy for us to say, oh, the pain's worth it. I think it's always worth it if it's someone else. If the four of us are on the breadline for the next 5 years going, oh, geez, well, I thought it was worth it. Maybe it will be eventually, but this sucks. There's a transition, that's all.
I mean, just to give hope here, and for those of us that are sailing towards the bright orange future. And I mentioned Hayek before, and everyone will know this because everyone would have seen the clip 1,000 times. But he has in his later years, he did this wonderful interview, which is just so good. And he goes, the only way to take money out of the hand of the government is by a sly and roundabout way. And I probably didn't get the quote right. So it's not that we can't transition to a hard money standard, ideally a Bitcoin standard, because it's really the only candidate that will work in the 21st century. It's just that it's not going to be democratically voted in. The powers that be are not going to relinquish that power. And to Scott's exact point, a lot of the people who have played the game according to the rules as presented to them. I'm just working hard. I bought a bunch of investment properties. Yeah, I levered my way up. But every single, from my banker to my real estate agent to the mortgage broker to my Uncle Fred, everyone told me that's what I had to do as a sensible, prudent means to get ahead. And now you're telling me we're going to a hard money standard where I'm absolutely going to be like, it's not going to happen. That's why I'm so 100%. The incentives for those of us that may have prepared for that, okay, yes, it's going to be great for us, but we're not going to convince the rest of the world to go along with it. But it doesn't mean it can't happen. And I think there's never I don't think there's a inflection point which is specific in time. It's going to transition where there's an overlap for many, many, many years. We're already seeing it in the US with the Genius Act and the stable coins and all of this kind of, we've got Tether now moving to the Bitcoin blockchain, and they're doing all this really cool stuff there. And it's like, it's frustrating to us who see the potential for what this could mean on the other side of all of that. But it's going to be a slow process where where they coexist for a time. We've been in this world before. We had gold and fiat for a long time. Right up to 1971, and between 14 to 71, we kind of lived. We had one foot in each camp, and it was a decades-long kind of transition. So I think if we are going to that way, it will happen organically. It will happen slowly. It'll happen in this sort of sly roundabout kind of way. But it will be a slow decline in one and a slow ascent in the other, and that's really the only viable practical path of ever getting there.
You're looking for a hassle-free way to buy Bitcoin in Australia? HardBlock makes it easy. As Australia's longest-running Bitcoin-only exchange, their mission is to help Australians simply and easily buy Bitcoin and take it into self-custody. There are no deposit or trading fees, just a clear 2.4% spread. That covers operating costs, so you always know exactly what you're paying. Withdrawals are just $1.18 or as low as 400 sats with AutoSend. There are no hidden charges, no surprises, just a fast, reliable, and easy way to stack sats with total transparency. Get started today at hardblock.com.au. Bitcoin made easy for Aussies.
Can I just jump in there and maybe get you both to unpack you just mentioned the US is tracked now around the Genius Act and all the things that the Trump administration is doing that are more crypto-friendly, so to speak. I always look at this with a very skeptical view that it seems like they're trying to kind of manage that transition from old world fiat to crypto. But at the same time, it almost feels like they're trying to transplant the fiat controls that they've got into the crypto space. Obviously, stablecoin being the one where they can use it to manage their debts and still keep everyone on a US dollar rails through US dollar stablecoins as other countries' currencies fail. Okay, we've got a stablecoin, US dollar stablecoin ready for you to go. Just transition over to this. I've got this prediction that I think that probably Japan will shit the bed at some point and they'll switch to a US dollar stablecoin. That's currently my bet of like a first world economy to fail and switch over to a new system, and they'll jump on this Trump train stablecoin system, which is, I don't necessarily see that as a good thing. I feel like they're recreating this existing financial paradigm on these new technological rails that the Bitcoin community and all these other shitcoin tech platforms are all constructing for the existing administration to be like, oh, okay, well, old system's dead. We've got all this new fancy tech now. We're going to keep our control mechanisms in place and keep the party going for another 50 years. So, I kind of want the doom and gloom scenario where something collapses and it's like, okay, well, in that scenario, yes, it's crap. We're already in the chasm because of a collapse, and now we can rebuild on a sound money standard on Bitcoin, gold, whatever that is. So maybe unpack what's happening in the US a bit more. Do you guys see it as a good thing? Do you see these controls still getting like snuck in, but with crypto rails on top? Do you see it as a good thing? Maybe we'll start with you, Andrew.
I see it as an inevitable thing. I mean, is it ideal? Is it the way I would hope it goes? No, but it is. I mean, a really good analogy here. Let's see how this works. So the Romans adopted Christianity at a point. Was it Constantine? I think it was Constantine.
I think it was, yeah.
And they didn't want to. There is great control in religion, and it was really this bottom-up phenomenon, Christianity, just sort of emerged, and all the people were talking about it. And they had no choice but to adopt it because the people adopted it, right? And it's not a perfect analogy, but I think that's the way it's going to go with Bitcoin. They are not willingly going. They're going to control this thing as best they can because it's in their direct interest to do so. And even in their minds, they can do a lot of good by having their hands on these kinds of levers. So there's just no world where everyone sees the light. And, well, we're all gonna go over here and Besant and Trump have. I mean, I'm not a fan of Trump. I'll just put that right out there. I think he is very myopically self-interested, and the only reason he's saying these things is because he sees an opportunity to enrich himself. He's not part of the mission. He is not a true Bitcoiner. People might disagree with that. But he's going to go whichever way the wind blows. He's a populist, right? Like that is what populists kind of do. So they will twist and turn and try and say the right things. But the one thing that the most recent election did was signal very strongly to the political class that the Bitcoiners are actually a force to be reckoned with, and you don't want to. There's no downside in being against them, right? So you might as well say the thing. And this is the Roman Christian thing. At a point, they will bend the knee because there will just be such a groundswell bottom-up movement for it. It's just like, I want to spend my Bitcoin. I don't want to risk going to jail for mining Bitcoin or for using privacy tools. And it needs to be that intransigent minority that makes enough of a noise that fights for these kinds of things, that just eventually tips it over. And these movements, and it really is a movement, not to make ourselves like too grandiose a kind of thing. It's like, it needs to build and it needs to generate this groundswell, and it needs to become a force that's just way too big to ignore. I think we're on that path. But it's going to be messy and it's going to be slow. It's going to be 2 steps forward. It's going to be 1 step backward. We're going to cheer it because Trump says the right thing and adds some coins to the strategic reserve. And then we're going to cringe when he launches his own stupid meme coin for him and his wife, and it's all this stuff. And it's not going to go the way any of us will like to go. But the point is that one thing that you learn about Bitcoin is that it doesn't change. Like, you change, it doesn't change, right? And it can't change. That's kind of the big deal about it, right? Is that it's a rock in cyberspace that doesn't care about what you think or your philosophy or your art. All it does is says, I am here, and this is exactly what I am. And when an immovable object meets an unstoppable force, except that one of them is immovable, right? There's one that's much more unstoppable than the other. And I think that's what eventually sort of gets you there. And it's going to be messy. And whether or not there is a enforced pain through a deliberate transition, there's still going to be pain. Like, the amount of discomfort out there by lower and middle class America in particular is like never been this bad. Or you have to go back a long way to know how bad it is. So the point is that pain is coming, and people will, as all things, they will adopt new technologies and tools, not for ideological principles, but for pure, rational, utilitarian reasons. And you can see that. You can see that happening in the US, where it's just sort of like, what's the stat? Like 1 in 5 Americans have a exposure to Bitcoin, right? And you get in it for the quick gain, and then you stay for the revolution. Now, after you've been there for a few years, like, wow, this is incredible savings technology, and I'm seeing myself being debased in real times while the rich get richer, and yet on this thing over here, it's a safe haven from that. And it's okay for now. I'm telling more people. It's like, there's one thing you know about a Bitcoiner is that once that they've seen the light, they do not shut up about it, and they'll tell everyone that they know it. And that's how it kind of spreads. And so it's going to be wild to see, but it ain't going to be pretty, and it ain't going to be smooth, and it ain't going to be quick. Sorry, that was a long rant.
Couple of quick points. First one is it was Andrew who compared Bitcoin to religion, not me.
There's a lot of parallels.
Secondly, this is a bit of cognitive dissonance, but actually I hope makes sense. I have no issue with a Bitcoin-backed sound money standard. That's different from whether I think it's worth buying at the current price because of what the price may or may not be in the future. And if that sounds dissonant, then I'm just going to have to sort of sit with that, because the question is, will it happen? If you're saying to me theoretically, logically, if it was proposed, would I be okay with it? Yeah, absolutely. Now, I think there isn't. I'm not sure if it was a conversation we had on Twitter or not, but I think there is a question. You mentioned, Mike, about Japan and adopting a US dollar stablecoin. I think countries will very, very, very reluctantly, and for partly good reason and partly for arrogance and ego, resist the temptation to have their own sovereign currency replaced by someone else's, because the exchange rate does matter as a buffer economically in good and bad times. And so as a tool, not even a controlled tool, just as a tool, we know the dollar, I mean, every now and again, central banks will jump into the currency market, but really rarely these days. The dollar is 65 odd US cents right now as we record this. If it goes up or goes down, it makes exports more attractive, imports more expensive, or vice versa. And so it has this kind of natural stabilizing or mitigating impact. So I suspect countries will be very slow to say, I will take a global asset as a replacement for a floating exchange rate, for all the reasons that floating exchange rates actually are beneficial in my view. But if we were to move to a Bitcoin or something else as a basis for the sound money, either globally or nationally, because you go to just nationally, you know what I mean? I would have no problem with that. So it's not, again, my issue is not the technology or the concept itself. As an investment, the question is, how comfortable am I about the long-term future? And then thirdly, in terms of the Trump stuff, I suspect that for whatever the reasons, stablecoins will actually be something of a Trojan horse unintentionally for Bitcoin, because they will make, again, I use cryptocurrencies. Mike, you used crypto at least twice, by the way. I don't think I wasn't listening. They will make cryptocurrencies more standardized. When the US Mint / US government / Treasury says, here is my US dollar stablecoin, you're like, but that's kind of like Bitcoin, right? Now, you guys say, no, it's not. I agree with you, it's not. But to the average punter who's like, I've used that, I've transacted with that, I understand how that works, it's actually a much shorter path from the Trojan horse of that to Bitcoin, if it is going to be the final version, the final destination, if it is going to be dominant, if it is, to Ram's point, going to happen by sly and indirect means. I actually suspect that whatever their reasons for doing it, I think it's probably a Trojan horse for Bitcoin rather than a threat to it.
Yeah, I think that the whole point for me is, as Andrew already pointed out, it's a groundswell. It's going to be a ground up movement, and it's going to happen gradually. Then suddenly, to use Parker Lewis's, who was referencing somebody else, I can't remember, but basically, it's a great line.
I love. I use it regularly, as Scott knows.
It's a great line, and that's what will happen. Essentially, for me, when those individuals that begin to grok Bitcoin, they become like networks or nodes rather on the network, and they're incentivized now to learn about it, to potentially buy more of it, to
annoy friends and family about it,
borderline evangelists about this thing.
Yeah,
and so more and more nodes come onto the network, and the network effects grow, and as it grows, it creates a sense of coherence at scale. So the political class clearly are disincentivized to relinquish control of the money, because it is the cornerstone of state power and, if I can put it mildly, economic exploitation. And so the notion is that just like torrenting or the internet itself, it will slowly but surely make its way into people's minds, into their homes, into their houses, like a virus, really. And that is the way I think that it will transition, rather than this massive crack up boom where you can demarcate. We're on a fiat standard today. We've taken a vote. Tomorrow we're on a sound money standard. Yep. That's not acceptable. That's inappropriate. That will hurt and harm a lot of people. And effectively, that asymmetry has to work its way through the minds of the collective, the nation. We're coming up to the top of the hour, and I am mindful of everybody's time. I did want to start to bring this into land, and I'll do that by you've read Broken Money by Lynn Alden, which is fantastic, and the Bitcoin Standard, which is also fantastic. I would, because we've got Christmas coming up, and I don't know if Andrew has read this, but if you've read The Mandibles by Lionel Shriver, this is a fantastic book. It's it's a fiction, and it's basically about the collapse of the US currency. So, Scott, if you're hard up for something to read over the holidays, please.
I'll add it to the list. The Mandibles by Lionel Shriver, was it?
Add it to the list. Add it to the list.
Right now.
You're the third person to recommend that to me, so it must be something to it.
And I wanted to ask...
Bitcoin acceptance gets to a point where there's fan fiction written about it, just quietly. Yeah. I mean, that's the sci-fi kind of standard, right?
Well,
people writing their Bitcoin
there's
fan
actually only one mention of the word Bitcoin in this, and it's a disparaging comment.
Yeah,
there you go.
Which is interesting. Unlike this book, this is full of information about Bitcoin. And Scott, you might be able to read this. I mean, Andrew, you probably read this, Easy Bitcoin, which is you can learn Bitcoin within 10 minutes. We produce that here at HardBlock. Nice. And look, if anything takes your fancy after reading both of those books, then we can offer you $10 worth of free Bitcoin. Nice. Which is pretty jolly generous. I wanted to ask one last question of you in particular, Scott. Have you ever made a Bitcoin transaction, whether it's been on chain or on Lightning?
No, so I bought the $100 worth of Bitcoin, as Andrew mentioned, years and years ago. This will depress everybody. I sold them subsequently. So I have bought and sold. I used Coinbase at the time because it was just like, I don't know, go to the app and download an app and buy some Bitcoin and then sell it, and that was kind of the deal. So no, I've not transacted with it. I've not sent it anywhere other than using the exchange to buy and sell.
Interesting. So that's another. I mean, we're short of assigning any homework or anything like that. But I think, in terms of that that cognitive evolution, when you do send a Bitcoin transaction or have someone send you some Bitcoin, particularly over the Lightning Network, where it happens so swiftly and instantly, and there's zero account creation. It's just download a wallet. Oh wow, I have money now. And if you've ever used Nostr, you can literally create a shitpost and people will just send you money. It's phenomenal. Like, that alone, I think, will sort of help accelerate the adoption. So
just to jump in on that, there, the ability to do microtransactions on the internet fundamentally changes business models and upends them. It introduces a radically new way of online commerce. Maybe it doesn't work, I don't know, but I suspect it has a very powerful use case. And it's something that we have all, as someone I'm a 50-year-old man, I was there at the birth of the internet. I completely missed it. I should be worth $50 million. I'm not, because I didn't grok the insane importance and network effects of the internet. But what we realized with going through that process was really and this is where we've landed as a civilization, the way that we monetize it is by mining your data and then using it to sell you stuff. And that's proven to be really at scale, the only viable model. And this, particularly with Lightning and Arc and some of these other things, and it's like, it radically changes everything. And I can see, it's interesting what Rumble is doing. Rumble now activating microtransactions online. Can you imagine watching your favorite streamer and streaming money to them in real time? That I will just pay 0.1 of a cent while I watch you, and it's wild. Sorry, I'm off on a. I don't know who's got a time limit. I don't. I can talk this all day. But one of the. Now I've tripped myself up. One of the things that was interesting about the internet and watching the evolution of that, from someone who was an adult when it happened, was at university when it really sort of hit Australian shores, is that everyone at the time, in the late 90s and the early 2000s, we all knew it was a kind of a big deal. But what we imagined the internet to be, we were all off base. We were like, there's this one, everyone would have seen this wonderful David Letterman, Bill Gates interview. And Letterman's going, well, what do I do? He goes, oh, you can listen to a baseball game, and or you can send mail to people. It's like, kind of do that. He didn't mention streaming. He didn't mention OnlyFans. He didn't mention like 15,000 other like multi-billion-dollar services that exist today. And I'm pretty excited about all of this because I suspect that even all of us hardcore, super enthusiastic religious zealots, we have this vision of what Bitcoin will be in 50 years' time. I can almost guarantee we've got no clue as to how this thing is adopted and used, and the power that is latent within that. Combine that with AI, right? Agents, I tell you what, AI agents aren't going to be opening a Commonwealth bank account. I'll tell you that right now. And when we look back in 10 years' time and we look at some of the biggest companies in the world and the way that they are using Bitcoin, we haven't even imagined it yet. It's going to be, I suspect.
So we don't normally do this on the show, but I'm curious to know if anyone's got any end of year price predictions. You, particularly, Andrew, and Scott. At what price point are you starting to get interested in? Okay, cool. The adoption curve is sufficient. Maybe it's time to make an entry.
Go right.
I'll just on the back of that. I've made this point to Scott before, and I make it to others. And again, it's sort of like everyone has. I'm a free market guy, right? Everyone do their own thing, and if it's not for you, it's not for you. And I think Scott's laid out a pretty good reason why it's not for him. And just to throw in, me and him often joke we have a contractual obligation to throw in a Buffett quote. And Buffett says, the size of your circle of competence isn't really that important, but knowing where the limits are. And it's just like for anyone, particularly Scott, he's just said, well, I'm just not there yet. And I'm actually pretty good at doing what he's a very good investor. He's like, what problem am I trying to solve here? I'm very good at doing this kind of stuff. So it's not for him. That's totally fine. But what I think the challenge almost I put out there is for people who are on the fence. By the way, if you're completely against it and you've done no work, it's like you don't deserve to be spoken to because I can't take you seriously. But if you've tried to do a little bit of work and you've at least had a good faith engagement with this to try and understand it, and you're still not there, that is different. I entirely respect that. I do think it's worth drawing the line in the sand now and say, listen. So Scott's concerns are a valid one, and he's right, by the way. Like, if adoption doesn't take off meaningfully, this project is never going to live up to its potential, and the number is not going to get materially higher. It might even get lower. So that's actually an entirely reasonable standpoint. But then you would sort of say, well, okay, we don't know the future, but what if you rock up to Woolies one day and then the cashier goes, hey, would you like to pay in Bitcoin? Does that get you over the line?
Dear's law.
Doesn't get me over the lawn. Yes, right? Or it might be like, okay, that's not enough for me. What if when you Commonwealth Bank app, you open up your net bank account and then right there is buy Bitcoin and store Bitcoin? Does that get you over the line? No, not yet. All right, that's cool too. So the Reserve Bank of Australia starts buying it and adding it to their balance sheet. There you in. Yes. Now, I don't know where the line's going to be somewhere different for everyone. And I think that's what I think I put out there for those that are on the fence. Is like, cool, not for you. Ask yourself what needs to happen for that to change. And I say that from a great deal of experience in the share market game. And me and Scott talk about this all the time, which is like, before you buy a stock, outline what needs to go wrong for you to change your mind. Like, don't once you've bought the stock, you will rationalize your way to zero, right? Like you're like, oh, it's just now it's even cheaper, and oh, it's okay, the company's not doing that well, but it's in the price, and there's all these stupid next year. And we often talk about just away from the heat of the moment, before you've got the endowment effect of owning the thing, work out what needs to change, and then you've got a course of action. You've got a plan to enact if and when that happens. If it doesn't happen, then great, you've not done anything. And if it does happen, you go, well, look, it wasn't for me. I had some legitimate concerns around adoption, but it turns out that my grandma's using it, and Matt Common at the CBA is out there orange pilling people. It's like, now this might be my line in the sand. So I'll put that out there. Sorry, mate, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's great, mate. I'm also someone who laughed at the fact that it was a Perth baseball team getting paid in Bitcoin. Was it 2 or 3 years ago? They're probably pretty happy right now, and I'm looking like a deal. So, there is that too. What needs to happen? I think so. partly it's the market, partly it's me. And I guess I say that because, as Andrew knows from my investing, I struggle with uncertain but potentially lucrative upsides, which sounds silly to say, right? But I'm looking for more certainty in my investing than the blue sky that may exist. David Gardner is the Motley co-founder. He does it exactly the opposite way, and he's done it extraordinarily well. So frankly, part of the problem is me. And I've been working through exactly the question that you're asking, which is not so much the price, but at any point the adoption or the acceptance or the whatever, and then the risk and reward. And we've mentioned, I think you mentioned it today, but Bitcoin, even at a much higher price, is less risky than it was 2, 3, 5, 7, 10 years ago, because the network has built out. Yes, you're paying a lot more for it, but the things that could have brought it down, maybe it was going to get hacked at some point. Turns out not. Maybe governments were never going to accept it. Turns out not. Maybe the US government was going to ban it. Turns out not. The further we go, institutions buying it, trading it, setting up ETFs, faster growing ETFs.
It's a Lindy effect.
Right? And so there's a lot of that going on. And so probably two things: continued increased acceptance and uptake by a broader range of, I'll say society, I can't mean institutions and individuals and governments. They're just the broader use and acceptance, right? That's kind of it. Maybe it's not Woolies necessarily. There's maybe it's probably a point before that, quite frankly, which is just, is it looking likely? And the downside goes away at some point, at least in absolute terms. If this becomes a flash in the pan, Bitcoin's still worth something, but it's not worth what it's worth now. Someone goes, that was fun. We're now moving over to the US dollar stablecoin, for example, right? All the banks and BlackRock go, that was fun. We'd rather do, either we're made to or we're going to choose to do it. And so it goes over there. The price falls by 75%. That's also possible. So there's always those ups and downs, risk and potential reward. I think that the conversation I'm having with myself right now is I'm closer to buying Bitcoin than I have ever been, for exactly that reason of considering the upside potential somewhat backstopped by the current adoption and acceptance. The one thing, the biggest thing I'm probably going to get my head around still, is the price. And that is, if Bitcoin is fairly valued relative to, now there can't be fair value, but let me explain, relative to the current level of acceptance and adoption, then that's okay. If it turns out that there was a whole lot of buying pressure just because, and again, think about stocks, right? What's a great example, Ram? I don't know. A company's gone really, really well for the very long term, right? Still had periods during its early life where everyone's got super excited. Oh man, this could be anything. Cisco Systems, great example, right? Yeah. Microsoft, .com boom. So Microsoft 1999, shares go through the roof. And someone says, Microsoft's going to be fantastic, it's going to be brilliant, it's going to be huge. All this is going to, people are going to use it, it's going to develop a cloud offering. Steve Ballmer's going to get the risk silence, Satya Nadella's going to take over, and they're going to build this amazing business that is going to be super dominant. By 2025, this is going to be a hugely amazing, right? All exactly 100% true. So you can substitute or put an analogy around adoption acceptance of Bitcoin. Back to 1999, Microsoft was at a price that it fell during the .com crash and didn't get back to 15 years. So in that context, the adoption, acceptance, success of Microsoft was disconnected from the price. Now, in one case, Bitcoin is the price, so it's harder to be disconnected in the same way. But if there is speculative buying that dries up when the big gains start to plateau a little bit, I don't know how much, the speculators leave the market, the people who are just trading actually are buying and selling just as they normally do, but that extra buying pressure goes away. It's possible the price is lower even as adoption increases. So
Dude, I'll say something controversial just quickly.
Yeah, go on.
I'm sorry, I'm going to annoy a lot of people here. I would say the most zealot, laser-eyed Bitcoiner will dump a massive pile of this. If we woke up tomorrow and Bitcoin is at 10 million a coin, Mike, dude, you're going to sell some. You'd probably sell a lot.
I'll push back on that a little bit, because I would suggest that if at $10 million a coin, the thing that I want to buy, they'll accept Bitcoin for it.
Yeah, but so the big rotation underway at the moment, right? So why is the price suppressed? It's all this nonsense that's sort of out there. And I was talking about this with Checkmatey the other day, right? It's just like, yeah, the OGs are selling. And like, what? Everyone has a price. What's the Winston Churchill quote? I'm not even I'm going to butcher it, but the point is everyone has a price. And I'm not throwing shade out there, but it's like, at a point, money, any money, even the world's most perfect, hard, purest, final boss of money, which I think is Bitcoin. Don't get me wrong. It's the best thing ever, but I can't consume it. I can't live in it. And at a point, the opportunity, it'll just be, I am going to let go of some of this and live in a mansion made of gold and have 12 Ferrari. No, I'm never going to do that because I'm not that kind of dude. But people will, and of course they will, because that's what money is for. It's for saving and it's for spending. And these virtue signaling Bitcoiners who go, I'm never selling. It's like, dude, maybe if you're Michael Saylor and you're already worth $1 billion and you just want to go down in history as that guy, I can kind of respect that. But I think we've got to get, it's like, that is why there will always be a upside to the rate of acceleration in price, even under the best case of scenario, because at a point, all of us will say, yeah, okay, I will upgrade my life, you know? And it's just like, well, I wouldn't. So, well, let's just start the bidding. $200,000 a coin. No. $500,000. No. I will get to a point where you'll go, oh yeah, okay, I will. And no judgment. Like, that's what it's for. And that natural, actually, we need that to happen. We need that to happen because there's only 21 million coins. 3 or 4 of them are lost, right? Or unspendable. And there's 8.5 billion people in the world. How does this become the global reserve currency, which we all transact on, if none of us are ever selling it and we're all diamond hands? Like, we kill it ourselves. Like, so it has to rotate. And it does. Am I making sense?
Yeah, well, I'll jump in there with a quick perspective, and then I've got maybe one final sign-off question that Scott can comment on, which is, like, language is important, and the language you're using is, well, I'm never selling. I'm not going to sell it. But as DJ hinted at, he's willing to trade it. He'll trade it for something. Yeah. Because to a hardcore, intense Bitcoiner, fiat currency is effectively it's poison, it's toxic. It's not necessarily worthless, but it's getting that way.
It's just a less good money.
So in a world of $10 million Bitcoin, what is $10 million to me? That's, you know, $10 million of a rapidly inflating worthless, well, not worthless again. Yeah. Language is important asset, but I might trade a little bit of it to get a house.
Sorry, sorry, Mike. Yeah. I 100% agree, and you're exactly. I say this thing all the time to my friends. I am never selling, but I am spending. Yeah. Now, whether I have to do an exchange transfer at some point because the person I'm wanting to buy off does not accept Bitcoin, which is the reality for 99% of goods and services that are out there, 100%. Yeah. And so I will rationalize it that I'm spending it. I'm not selling it. So I'm glad you caught me on that. You're right. I agree.
That's all good. That's all good.
But you will spend it. But you will spend it. You will spend some of it.
Maybe.
You'll spend some of it.
Maybe. The thing is, my I'm happy where I am. I don't necessarily need to buy anything. Anyway, that's different.
Yeah, but I mean, think about the money again. Go back to this thing. So let's say money is power, right? And let's say that you can be the.
Sorry, if I could trade my Bitcoin to influence elections, maybe.
No. I'm not even being evil here. I'm just saying. And I'll do my virtue signaling. Right. I'm the same dude. I am never moving from this house. I don't care how much money I ever make. I love my house. I'm not going anywhere. This is where I will die. Right. And so I just don't need a mansion. I certainly don't need a Ferrari. I will never buy any of that stuff. But let's go again, hypothetical, silly scenario, but it goes to 20 million a coin or something. And I am just like mega rich. I can be, that is super powerful. Not in the, I will crush the common man under my boot, but I can change lives here. I can steer society in a way that I never would have the potential to do
because you
otherwise.
have fuck you money.
I do, man.
Start to stand up.
I can go in there. I can change the life of a hardworking nurse. Right, I can go in there and I can fund the charities that I think are really important. I can give money to OpenSats to further Bitcoin development. I can give money to Latin America to help them get out from the tyranny of corrupt, broken regimes. Like, that is power. And it's power that can be, so I don't think when we say power that it's automatically a negative kind of thing. But I would rather in my limited, I'm probably here for 20, 30 years tops, right? And I've got that kind of wealth. I'm going out swinging, man. And it's not to be some hedonistic, shallow life. It's to use that power for good. And I know how that sounds. And if it means I have to spend some of my Bitcoin to do that, I'm 100% going to do that.
I think that's a lot of Bitcoiners the power that you're touching on there, and a lot of Bitcoiners that are younger, it's an opportunity to become capital allocators.
Yes.
And allocate capital to the things that they want to see in the world, whether that
be the change
is,
you want to see, man.
You know, it could be a myriad of different things, and that's how we get nice things again. And it sort of takes away the concentrated power of capital allocation from the cantillionaires and the economic manipulators at the central bank and the politicians who can't spend other people's money very well, certainly not my money better than I can. And so that's the notion, I think, that I appreciate a lot is if it was to scream up to 20 million, great. Now I'm a capital allocator and I can support some of the local businesses that in my area that maybe, you know, I want to see around because I want to go there and I want to enjoy them. Like it's an incredibly selfish thing
and you have to
do.
spend your Bitcoin to do that.
Brewery.
Well, that's a bubble. You want to talk about bubbles?
I mean, if you've got all the money in the world, who cares, right? You have your own craft brewery. You're supporting your personal brewer. By the way,
I'd start a vineyard beforehand.
Just to jump in,
really waste some money.
It's same with shares, right? And so this is
Yeah.
it is. You know, he who owes with the most money still dies. He who owes with the most Bitcoin still dies. Most shares still dies. It's all the same thing, and that's okay. If you, as I said, if you're Sailor or you're Warren Buffett and want to die with squillions of bucks, then knock yourself out. That's your call. Buffett's money goes to charity. I know where Sailor's goes when he dies. And that'll be redistributed in some way, shape, or form, hopefully by some good people doing some good things. And you can not do it. That's okay too. But the idea of just accumulating for its own sake, hopefully for me, gets to a point where I'm like, I've accumulated enough now, whether it's in Bitcoin or not. It won't be in cash, by the way, to that point, right? So this is the other thing is it's not Bitcoin versus cash for me. It's Bitcoin versus opportunity cost, i.e. shares. If I can have a portfolio that's, I don't know, whatever size by the time I'm whatever age, like, okay, well, I can fund my living expenses. I'm a pretty simple man too. I've got 2 used cars in the driveway. You know, I'm happy just to live my life. I've got enough income to live my life. What am I doing to do with the rest? And yes, I could just, you know, collect it and have the number go up and feel good about the fact I own more stuff. But if I'm not living a different life and helping anyone else out, and again, it's a moral question. It's not for us to say here what people should do, but it's the same kind of idea, right? At some point you say, I have enough, or I don't have enough. I'll spend some of my invested wealth to have the things I want to have. That's kind of the natural, I think, no matter what currency asset we're talking about, it's all the same thing.
Can I jump in with one final question that I was trying to get to before? Hopefully I can get this out right. Scott, so we're talking about adoption, and Andrew rattled off a bunch of things which might move the needle of adoption towards, you know, oh, it's popping up in my banking app or it's popping up at my grocery store, whatever. Yeah. And that's kind of these moving the needle that way. But what if, because I always think I'm always like full schizo conspiracy theorist in all things. I'm the eternal pessimist. Right. So does it move the needle to you on the coercion side? So if you actually woke up one day and, oh, I've lost access to my Commonwealth banking app because I said a naughty word online on my Twitter, or I can't use my Commonwealth Bank app because I've hit my carbon credit limit for the month, and the government's talked to the Commonwealth Bank and all the major banks and set these carbon limits, which Commonwealth Bank is actually one that is tracking. You can actually go to your app and turn on this carbon tracker right now. Right. That is a thing that exists. Yep. And so in theory, there is this lever that the government can pull where they could cut off your spending when you hit your carbon limit for flights or eating meat or whatever, or buying fuel. Yep. And there is an argument that Bitcoin is an alternative there. It's a life raft that cannot be controlled by the government. You can still go to your local farmer down the road and you have a Bitcoin wallet on your phone. He has a Bitcoin wallet on his phone. You can directly give Bitcoin to him, independent of a government, of a bank, or anything. So does that move the needle? Because everything we've talked about has been purely investor-based, investment logics and that sort of rational thought. But purely on this, like, quite, I will admit, fully bit schizo, bit conspiratorial, maybe bit doom and gloom. But does that help at all? Does that change the metric for you at all?
I'm not worried about it as much as you are. So conceptually, directionally, yes, I absolutely take your point. If it was becoming more obvious, or that started to happen, in China got social credits, right? So the thing you're talking about already happens, let alone could happen here. In that circumstance, yes, absolutely, I would be more interested in owning something that can't be easily tracked or taken off me. I have to say, and this is going to be super stupidly controversial at this late stage in the podcast, given that Bitcoin is not truly anonymous in almost all cases, but pseudonymous, and gold is completely anonymous, I'm not entirely sure I was worried about that. I wouldn't have gold as well as or instead of Bitcoin for that purpose specifically, which again is not a slight on Bitcoin. It's just kind of one of those, if I have to buy the Bitcoin, I've used some sort of KYC. I mean, you guys know more than me. I'm sure there's ways of doing it, right? But for the layman, for me, unless I wanted to do that, and make sure the government could not know exactly what I own. I mean, we've heard about the US government confiscating other people's Bitcoins. How do you do it? You lock them in jail and say, until you give us the Bitcoin, you're staying here. So, we can be coerced to do that if they know I've got it. That's an easier transition. So, I yes, to your point, if government started to become more controlling, the surveillance was stronger and actions taken, I would absolutely do things to make my life more flexible, give myself more options. Would that be Bitcoin? Probably, yeah, and probably gold as well for both those reasons. Again, you'll tell me, and your listeners will know, viewers will know how possible it is to be anonymous entirely. But if I've got one thread and they follow that thread all the way through, Bitcoin address, all of a sudden I'm again, I don't want to get the details because you guys know this better than me. So I don't know the answer. If it happened, I would absolutely be far more interested in doing it as a way of opting out or giving myself some back end options. Would I probably buy gold and bury it in the backyard as well as Bitcoin? Probably, yeah, because that's at least, maybe if you've got a KYC, if you buy a large amount of it, but if I go buy small amounts without it, there's an option there. But I'm not worried about it, honestly. But yes, the thought experiment is absolutely valid. If that did happen, I would absolutely find ways to diversify my finances away from traditional finance, for sure.
So, Scott, perhaps that is one way, the coercion, the prospect of coercion, that you could overcome the Knightian uncertainty that you seem to be suffering from with regards to Bitcoin. Gentlemen, thank you so much for jumping on this call and having a very robust and very interesting debate. It was discussion.
I don't think we disagreed on that much, actually.
Not really.
Yes,
not
we did.
really.
Sorry, just taking you
No, we didn't.
But I'm going to have to hype it up onto the socials and stuff just to get the clicks.
The thumbnail
right?
will be great. It'll be me and Andrew with black eyes.
We
I'll
never
put
even
links.
touched on the hard money stuff, really, in the end, did we?
We could come back for round 2 perhaps next year.
Don't suggest he'll be back in a heartbeat.
If not, you can always tune into the Motley Fool podcast and listen to Scott and Andrew go at it.
Yeah.
I wanted to thank Andrew. I'll put links in the show notes, and Scott, to your work at the Motley Fool and Strawman.com, so people can follow up. They will be able to follow you on Twitter as well. I'll make sure that your Twitter handles are in the show notes as well if anyone wants to follow these two gentlemen and start reply guying them in the comments.
How badly flame am I going to get, do you reckon, guys? What's the prediction?
Oh, I don't know. I think everyone's too depressed at 100k Bitcoin, which is weird.
So weird.
I've escaped it. Well done. All right.
But Mike, Andrew, Scott, thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Episode 99. Go and listen to Toto, Nina, and who was it? Prince.
Yeah.
And congratulations on the 100th episode coming up, guys. Well done.
Yeah, well done.
Thank you.